Hi, this is Cathy Harper with Parkbench, and I'm here today with Tim Howard. Tim is the CEO of both Energy Sourcing as well as Fortify Experts, and we're here today to learn a little bit more about your business. So tell us about both of these organizations, how you got started, and what types of services you offer.
Great. So, Cathy, we are a search firm in the space of energy technologies, executive search, and cybersecurity. We've been around for about 13 years here in Houston, and we actually have focused on the energy industry, but because of the cyclic nature of the energy industry, we spun up our cybersecurity division called Fortify Experts, which has really enabled us to reach to a much broader audience out there. Okay. And so most of what we do is in the executive search space around that.
Got it. So as the owner of an executive search firm, what advice would you give companies who are looking to hire?
You bet. Well, two things that are happening right now is that job postings and contingent recruiting are a waste of money. For most of these companies, they're really throwing away a lot of money by putting it in there, and they're really not hitting the targeted candidates that they ought to be going after.
And why is that? Tell me a little bit more about that.
What's really interesting, you've been hearing some of this in the news, is that the U.S. right now is at the lowest unemployment rate since 1969, since most people were, before they were born, right? And then the other thing is that there's over a 400% increase in the number of openings that are out there just over the last 10 years. And that's actually reduced the number of people to jobs opening ratio. It used to be like a 7-to-1 people to job opening. It's now a 1-to-1 ratio in the last 7 years. Over the 7-year period, it's reduced down to 1-to-1.
I had no idea.
Everybody with a phone is trying to be a recruiter.
Yeah.
Right? And so they're going after this kind of the very quick hits instead of really diving very deep. And so the quality of candidate has actually gone down based on kind of some of these market conditions that are out there.
Interesting. And does that have an impact on the companies that are hiring?
Well, it really does. There's a JobLite survey that was out there that said that these recruiters are 25% less likely to disqualify people than the older recruiters are.
Wow.
And so they're also posting, and we call it posting and praying.
Yeah.
Right? They're posting jobs and they're just praying the right candidate's going to come in. And what that's doing is it's tapping into the market, into these active candidates, and those active candidates always have their hand raised, looking for the next job. And so the biggest impact to employers is the turnover rate has skyrocketed. In fact, across all the industries, it's up to about 17.8%.
Wow.
Turnover. Turnover. Some industries, and that's per year.
That's got to be a huge expense for companies.
It's absolutely a huge expense. I mean, some industries are like 25% turnover.
Wow.
And they say that it takes, for a highly skilled person, almost 200% of their salary to replace them.
Oh my goodness.
And so these companies are just drowning in turnover. And I think that's because of the trend of these recruiters, and even internal recruiters are often focused on praying the right person's going to come into them.
Yeah. Does that have an impact on like the candidates themselves? I mean, how do you relate that to the actual candidates then?
It really does. In fact, some of these, what I consider the really good candidates, they tell me they get as many as 20 recruiting calls and emails and contacts every single day.
Wow.
And
that's overwhelming.
It really is. And so I know some of them that are actually removing their stuff off of social media because they don't have time for that.
Yeah.
They're really not, most contingent recruiters or even internal recruiters will tell you they only get about 20% of the people to respond back to them. And so you're leaving 80% of the people out there that aren't ever responding.
Yeah, because they're just too overwhelmed by the sheer
They're too overwhelmed. In fact, Indeed had a survey that they did. Well, overall last year, they had an increase of about 7.8% in the number of job postings that were put out there.
Okay.
They had a decrease in the number of applicants by almost 1.5%. And so they're putting more jobs out there. People are not responding to job postings near like they were. So it's not who's looking for you, it's who you're looking for.
Interesting.
And where I think that impacts us is that if these recruiters are focused on the active candidates, and I classify candidates in really 4 different categories.
Okay.
You got the active candidates. Those are the ones that they're posting their resumes out there. They're actively looking for a job. They're going to take phone calls. They're responding to job postings. They're going to naturally have a higher turnover rate because they're always kind of looking. And those candidates, I categorize them really as like a C candidate.
Interesting.
Because they're, even after they take a job, they're still on all the media and they're still going to get the phone calls.
Yep.
So the next good phone call that comes in, they may end up jumping, right? And then there's another classification that I call the passive candidates. And you know, most recruiters try and go after these, and those are the folks that are on LinkedIn. They've got an extensive profile, and they're going to take calls for interesting jobs. They're the ones that put the trigger on their profile that says, I'm always open.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Doors open. And those, many times you'll find some good candidates, but I still see those as B-level candidates because they've always got their hand raised at least halfway.
Okay.
Right? There's another category that I think are the ones that we should be going after, and those are what I call the embedded candidates.
What is an embedded candidate then?
So those are the folks that don't ever apply to a job. They have usually limited LinkedIn profiles. They're not answering phone calls from recruiters typically. They're very hard to attract.
Yeah.
And there is even another set of candidates out there that I call the untouchables. Those are the folks that are kind of the owners and the big stockholders and things of that sort, where they're just never going to answer at all, right? I mean, I'm an owner of my company and I love what I do. I'm not going to answer a job posting. But I think where people are missing is not going after these embedded candidates.
Interesting.
I think that's the core market that we have found where we get the highest value, and those have the longest tenure. They're providing the most strategic advantage to these companies. That's why they're stuck in those companies, and the companies are treating them really well.
Yeah.
But they can also be what I consider the A players. They're the ones that are making the biggest difference. And there's been studies that show the A players can be 2 to 4 times more productive than a B or C player.
Interesting. Yeah.
And so how do you go after those?
Yeah, how do you go after those? How do you attract these embedded candidates?
It's certainly not through contingent recruiting.
Okay.
I completely think that model is broken. Because what's happening is those companies are not being paid to recruit unless they get a hire. So it only attracts the companies or the recruiter that is involved with speed and volume, and they're only being paid when they're successful.
Kind of a churn and burn type.
Right.
Yeah.
And so they're throwing resumes out. They cannot spend the time and the effort to really find what the fit and the quality is and the cultural fit specifically for that client. Interesting. And the other thing that it does, I think it actually hurts the reputation of the hiring company. Because you know, sometimes they'll hire 3 or 4 of these contingent recruiters thinking, I'm just going to widen my base of candidates that are coming in. And those companies don't have time to even follow up with candidates. And so now they're going out there and they're hitting all these candidates, but nobody's following up with the candidates. And the candidates then go, well, I'm not ever going to apply to that company again.
It leaves a poor taste.
It really leaves a poor taste in their mouth. And so we found that there are other models out there that can attract not just the embedded candidates, but really elevate the level of kind of respect this company has out there.
Okay.
And that's really why we've started moving more to a committed relationship with our clients in what they would typically call a retained search.
Okay. And how is that different? Tell me a little bit more about retained search, how you define
You know,
that.
what's cool about it is when you get a phone call from a recruiter and they say, hey, I'm specifically calling you because I'm on a retained search and I've looked up your profile and it looks like you're a really good fit to this. Our response rate goes from that 20% that most recruiter gets have, all the way up to 50%,
Wow.
and we're more targeted. So we're really in a really narrow niche, and we're getting a great response rate. And I think that's because they feel special.
Yep.
And it's exclusive, and all of a sudden you stroke their egos.
For sure.
And many times that's what it requires to get into that kind of candidate is you got to stroke and nurture them a little bit. You got to act like you're a career coach.
Yeah.
Not
That
just,
makes a lot of sense,
not just a, here, are you interested in opportunity? Because they're more interested in their reputation and also the confidentiality of a job search, because they're
That's
embedded
important.
in this company. They can't afford for somebody at that company to find out their job search.
Yeah.
And you can't do that. You can't be confidential in a contingent search.
So you're almost acting kind of as a partner to the company in figuring out what they really need for a particular position, but also a partner to the applicant as well.
Right. And we're really doing the coaching on the applicant side to help them with that whole job search. Most of the time, the candidates that we're looking and working with, we're never even involved in a job search.
Interesting.
And we'll actually kind of work with them until they go, yeah, you know what, maybe I should look around.
It kind of opens their
For
eyes
something.
a little bit to something that they hadn't considered until you had approached them.
The other thing that happens is in a retained search, you typically have a longer guarantee. So these companies are lowering their risk because now we know that I'm going to be held responsible for finding the right fit, and that person's got to stick there for a lot
For a
longer.
long time. Interesting.
So it's not just a 30 or a 90-day period. I'm being held accountable to find the right person.
Is that typically much more expensive than kind of a traditional search model?
That's a great question, because a lot of people think retained, I'm going to spend so much more money on it. First, the ROI for it is much better. You're going to get a better candidate. You're going to actually reduce the amount of work that the HR department has, because we put the work on ourselves. I'm only putting 3 to 4 candidates in front of a company, and you could hire any one of those. You're not filtering through resumes trying to figure out which one.
Any one of the ones you bring to the table will be really valuable.
I mean, that's what my clients love, is like, the hardest thing you make is the decision on which one to pick, not can I pick one.
Great.
And then the other side is, there are some companies out there that charge as much as 40% of the first year fee.
Wow.
And so it sounds like a lot, right? They offer a great level of service. But what we've actually found is that we can offer that same level of service at really kind of contingent level pricing. Because the odds of us placing somebody go way high, and right now we've got 100% success rate.
Okay.
And so if my success rate goes way up, I don't have to charge as much.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
so it's been a great model for us.
It's a benefit to your clients.
It really
all
has.
around.
And so we've got what we call kind of an engagement model, which is a little lower level, but it still allows us to go out and say, we were retained, and so we still get the level of candidate.
Okay.
And there's some instances where companies say, I want you to fully take this responsibility on. And I want you to be fully retained, because we want the level of respect that it's also going to bring our company.
Okay. That's more full service.
When we started proposing this, we had done a lot of contingent searches over the years. When we started proposing this model, our clients literally ran to it. They realized how difficult it's been for them to work in a contingent, or even the internal recruiters, the difficulty they have to attract the right kind of candidates. And you think about executive searching. Most executives are hired through retained searches because they get to a higher level candidate. So why not look at hiring most of your critical hires in the same fashion?
Yeah.
And if you can do it for virtually the same cost,
That's
it makes a lot of sense.
huge win.
And so it's been really successful for us and for our clients.
Wonderful.
I would hope that anybody that out there that's listening to this, that ultimately will at least explore that as an option.
Yep. Why do you think you're the best fit?
Everybody on our team has at least 15 years experience, deep energy technology experience, as well as cybersecurity. We've got a little bit different team in the mix of both of those companies.
Okay.
But I think it's because of the thoroughness that we bring to the table and the level of professionalism that we bring. We hear from our clients that it's just easy to work with us. That they can hand things over and trust that they're going to ultimately get a really good hire.
That's great.
We try not to waste their time.
Take the pressure off. Wonderful. Well, I'm so impressed by everything that you've shared. If anybody wants more information about energy sourcing or Fortify Experts, we'll have all of the information on our website. And thank you for spending the time today and walking us through this. This is wonderful.
Thanks for your time, Cathy.
All right. Have a good one.